The sound of flesh striking flesh can change a life forever. One moment, Pam Bondi stood at the height of her power, commanding a silent courtroom. The next, her carefully built world shattered with the sharp crack of an open palm. That morning had begun like any other victory-bound day in Pamela Jo Bondi's distinguished career. She rose before dawn in her Georgetown townhouse, following the same ritual she had kept for 20 years. Black coffee, no sugar, a 7-minute shower, and the navy suit chosen precisely for closing arguments. Not too flashy, not too severe. Just enough authority to sway a jury. Her blonde hair was flawless, her makeup subtle but exact. In the mirror, she saw what everyone else did, the embodiment of justice itself. By 7:30 a.m., she was already in her office at the Justice Department, reviewing her notes for the last time. She knew the case by heart. The prosecution of Senator Raymond Giles had consumed 18 months of her life. It was airtight, or so she believed. "Today's the day we bring down the senator," said Daniel Warren, her chief assistant, setting a fresh coffee on her desk. Bondi didn't look up. "We don't celebrate until the verdict, but yes, today's the day." It was exactly the kind of case she thrived on. High profile, politically charged, and built for headlines. Senator Giles, a 3-term Republican from Ohio, was accused of embezzling over $2 million in campaign funds, money used to finance a lavish life of vacation homes, private jets, and extravagant gifts for his wife Maria. Maria Giles, former Venezuelan beauty queen, 15 years younger, had been a puzzle from the start. In every interview, she fiercely defended her husband's innocence. Bondi admired her loyalty, even as she prepared to dismantle it. "Any word on whether Maria will be in court today?" Bondi asked. Daniel nodded. "Front row, same as always." "Good," she said, closing her notebook. "Let's finish this." The drive to the E. Barrett Prettyman Federal Courthouse took 15 minutes. Washington's October sun glinted off the marble monuments as her government SUV rolled through the city she had come to master. A city of power, ambition, and quiet rivalries. Reporters were already waiting on the courthouse steps. Flashbulbs exploded as Bondi emerged, her navy suit gleaming like armor. She didn't smile. She rarely did, but offered a small nod to acknowledge the press, her expression calm and unreadable. Inside, the air was electric. The courthouse staff greeted her like a celebrity. "Big day today, Ms. Bondi," said Frank, the head bailiff. "Every day is big when justice is on the line," she replied. In the preparation room, her team set up the final exhibits. Bondi stood by the window, gazing out at the Capitol dome, a reminder of the senator's former power. Not for long, she thought. "Ms. Bondi," said Rebecca Chen, the youngest member of her team. "The senator's here, his wife too." "How does he look?" "Confident," Rebecca said, smiling for the cameras. "They always do," Bondi replied. "Right up until the handcuffs go on." At precisely 9:15, she entered courtroom 305. Silence fell instantly. It always did. Across the aisle sat Senator Giles, flanked by his defense attorney Martin Reynolds, a former colleague turned high-priced defender. "Morning, Pam," Reynolds murmured as he passed. "Ready to lose your first big one?" Bondi ignored him and scanned the gallery until her eyes met Maria Giles. The senator's wife wore a modest blue dress, her dark hair pulled back, her face composed but pale. For a brief second, the two women locked eyes. Two forces on opposite sides of a battle neither had chosen. "All rise," the clerk called as Judge William Harrison entered. The veteran judge, known for his strict courtroom, had presided over 17 of Bondi's cases. She had won 16. "Be seated," he said. "We're here for closing arguments in the United States versus Raymond Giles. Prosecution, are you ready?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Defense?" "Ready, Your Honor." Bondi stepped to the podium, adrenaline coursing through her. This was her moment, her arena. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "For 6 weeks, you've heard the evidence, overwhelming, undeniable evidence of Senator Giles's crimes. Today, I will show you why that evidence leads to only one conclusion. The senator is guilty beyond any reasonable doubt. Maria Giles sat rigid in the front row, her trembling hands clutching her purse. Bondi saw the cracks forming in her composure. She had seen that look before. The moment when denial finally gives way to truth. Bondi walked the jury through every detail: the offshore transfers, the cash withdrawals, the falsified reports, the testimony of the senator's own chief of staff. The defense would have you believe, she said sharply, that $2 million simply wandered from campaign accounts into private hands, that dozens of fraudulent signatures were all mistakes. But numbers don't lie. Documents don't lie. Bank records don't lie. From the front row, Maria's eyes were fixed on her, burning with something deeper than anger. Bondi pressed on. While claiming to fight for fiscal responsibility, Senator Giles bought a vacation home in the Cayman Islands. While promising to protect the middle class, he spent $50,000 of campaign funds on a single weekend in Paris. And while presenting himself as a man of family values, she paused, locking eyes with Maria. He used those same funds to buy a $175,000 diamond necklace. Something in Maria's expression changed, and in that instant, Pam Bondi knew the trial was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. Unconsciously, she reached for her throat where her diamond pendant usually rested, though she wasn't wearing it today. It was a tell, a small betrayal that Bondi had been waiting to see throughout the trial. The law is clear, Bondi pressed on, stepping closer to the jury box. Campaign funds are not personal funds. They cannot be used for personal expenses. No matter how entitled a senator might feel to luxury, the evidence has shown, beyond any doubt, that Senator Giles knowingly and willfully broke this law time and time again, for 3 years. She glanced at the defendant. Raymond Giles sat stiffly, his once handsome face now etched with stress. His silver hair, once immaculate, looked unkempt. The trial had aged him. Bondi continued, her voice firm. The prosecution has proven, beyond reasonable doubt. She never finished the sentence. It happened in an instant. Maria Giles shot to her feet, eyes blazing. Before anyone could react, her arm swung wide and her palm cracked against Bondi's cheek. The sharp sound cut through the courtroom like a gunshot, freezing everyone in place. "You destroyed him with lies," Maria screamed, her Venezuelan accent thick with fury as bailiffs rushed to restrain her. "You knew the evidence was fake." The sting on Bondi's cheek was nothing compared to the shock that gripped her. In 20 years, no one had ever dared to touch her, certainly not in open court. She stood frozen, her hand pressed to her burning cheek as Maria was dragged away, still shouting accusations that echoed through the silent courtroom. "You manufactured evidence. You threatened witnesses. You're corrupt. You're the criminal." Order. Order in the court. Judge Harrison's gavel slammed down, but the damage was already done. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. The moment spread across social media before Maria had even left the room. Senator Giles half rose from his seat, horror etched on his face. His attorney yanked him back down, whispering urgently. Across the aisle, Bondi's team sat in stunned silence. "The jury will disregard that outburst," Judge Harrison ordered, though his voice had lost its usual strength. "Bailiff, escort Mrs. Giles from the building. She's banned from these proceedings and will face charges for contempt and assault." He turned to Bondi. "Miss Bondi, do you need a moment?" The question snapped her back to life. Weakness wasn't an option. "No, Your Honor. I'm prepared to continue." But the judge shook his head. "We've had enough excitement for one morning. Court is in recess until 2 p.m. The jury is instructed not to discuss the case, or what they just witnessed." As the jury filed out, Bondi could see the damage. Glances filled with sympathy, curiosity, and doubt. Maria's accusations hung heavy in the air. Reporters sprinted for the exits, phones pressed to their ears. Within minutes, the slap would be national news. Daniel appeared at her side. "Pam, let's get you out of here." She nodded, gathering her papers with trembling hands. Her team surrounded her, forming a human shield against the swarm of reporters. Miss Bondi, do you have a response to Maria Giles's accusations? Will you press charges? Was the evidence fabricated? They pushed through the chaos into the prep room. Only after the door shut did Bondi allow herself to exhale, her pulse still racing. Are you all right? Daniel asked, handing her a bottle of water. I'm fine, she lied. Rebecca Chen, the junior prosecutor, glanced up from her phone. It's already on Twitter. Someone in the gallery got the whole thing. She'll be held in contempt, said Michael Patterson. She'll regret that stunt. But Daniel hesitated. Pam, there's something you should see. He turned his tablet toward her. On the screen, Maria's words. You knew the evidence was fabricated. The hashtag #Bondygate was already trending. It's nothing, Bondi said, her voice steady but her confidence wavering. Desperate people say desperate things. She handed the tablet back. We need to focus on finishing this trial. The jury saw what happened. Maria's outburst will only make them more sympathetic to us. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. The case had always been messy. Political pressure, high stakes, and corners quietly cut. Witnesses leaned on, files hurried. Nothing illegal, She rose, smoothing her skirt. I need to go to the Justice Department. The Attorney General wants to see me. What about the closing? You'll handle it, she said quickly. I've trained you for this. You know the case. He looked pale but determined. Are you sure? I don't have a choice. She grabbed her briefcase, forcing calm into her movements. Tell Judge Harrison there's been an emergency. He'll understand. The team watched in silence as she packed up. In 20 years, Pam Bondi had never walked out of a case. Something was very wrong. Should we be worried? Rebecca asked quietly. No, Bondi lied. This is just procedural. The AG wants to get ahead of the media narrative. No one believed her, but they nodded anyway. As she stepped into the hallway, the courthouse buzzed with whispers. Faces turned as she passed. Few things excited the legal world more than the fall of one of its own. Her phone pinged nonstop, news outlets already digging into her past cases. And somewhere deep in the Justice Department, someone had started talking. Bondi straightened her jacket and stepped into the main corridor. Reporters were waiting, drawn by the scent of scandal. Miss Bondi, is it true the evidence was tampered with? Did you knowingly present false documents? Will you be resigning? She didn't answer. She just kept walking. She walked out without a word, her face a mask of professional calm. At the curb, her government driver held the door open as cameras flashed. Justice Department, she instructed, sliding into the back seat. The tinted windows offered a brief refuge from the chaos outside. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, Pam Bondi finally exhaled. Her cheek still burned where Maria's hand had struck her. A small act of violence, trivial really compared to the horror she'd prosecuted, yet it had pierced something deep within, cracking the armor she'd spent a lifetime building. Her phone buzzed. A text from her younger sister in Florida, the only person who knew everything. Just saw you on CNN. WTF happened? She didn't reply. How could she explain that the image of Pam Bondi, incorruptible defender of justice, might be collapsing before the world's eyes? The 15-minute drive to Pennsylvania Avenue felt longer. Her thoughts raced through every possible scenario. What could the FBI have? The emails? Those were carefully worded. The off-record meetings with Giles's former aide? No witnesses. The altered financial report? Nothing that couldn't be explained or defended. She had survived worse. She was Pam Bondi, the prosecutor who outmaneuvered politicians and power brokers for decades. But as the Justice Department came into view, a cold dread settled in her stomach. Something was different this time. Maria Giles's slap had done more than sting. It had stripped away her veneer of control. The building that once felt like home now seemed foreign. The guards at security nodded politely, but the warmth was gone. In the elevator's brass reflection, she saw her face, a faint red mark on her cheek, hair slightly out of place. The first visible cracks in her perfect facade. She straightened her posture, lifted her chin. Whatever waited beyond that door, she would face it head-on. At the Attorney General's office, Kinsey's secretary, Elenena, greeted her with uncharacteristic formality. He's expecting you, Ms. Bondi. You can go right in. Not Pam. The shift stung more than she'd admit. She paused at the heavy wooden door, took a breath, and knocked. "Come in," called Kinsey's voice, familiar but stripped of warmth. Inside, the room felt colder than usual. A man sat opposite Kinsey, his back to her. When he turned, she froze. "Special Agent Marcus Taylor, FBI Public Corruption Unit." "Pam," Kinsey said, not rising from his seat. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I believe you know Agent Taylor." "We've crossed paths," she managed, shaking the agent's hand, though usually on the same side of an investigation. "Things change, Ms. Bondi," Taylor replied evenly. 4 minutes. That's how long it had taken, from Maria's slap to the start of her empire's collapse. Kinsey leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Unfortunate business in court today." "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," she said smoothly. "A desperate woman making a scene doesn't affect me, but I'd like to know why I've been pulled mid-trial and why the FBI is involved." Kinsey and Taylor exchanged a look. "This morning," Kinsey said, "Agent Taylor's office received a package, a USB drive and a 12-page letter from Thomas Wright." Her stomach dropped. "Wright, the forensic accountant she'd pushed out 6 months ago." Taylor continued, "He alleges he was pressured to alter his analysis of Senator Giles's finances. Claims your office threatened his license if he refused." "That's absurd," she said quickly. "Wright couldn't handle the pressure of a high-profile case. He's trying to cover his own failures." "The problem," Kinsey said, voice hardening, "is that he brought evidence, emails, recordings, meeting notes discussing specific changes to reports." Bondi's mouth went dry. "I'll need to see that before I comment." "Of course," Taylor said calmly. "But we're now conducting a formal investigation into potential prosecutorial misconduct. We'll be reviewing all your cases from the past 5 years. 5 years. Dozens of cases. Hundreds of witnesses who might suddenly feel brave enough to talk." "Robert," she said, turning to Kinsey, her voice tight, "this is a setup. The Giles team is behind this. You know me." For a moment she thought he might believe her, then his tone shifted, a cool, official. "The FBI will proceed with their review. In the meantime, you're placed on administrative leave, effective immediately." The words hit like a blow. Administrative leave. The first public step toward professional death. "You can't do that," she protested. "The Giles case will be reassigned to Daniel Warren." Kinsey interrupted. Judge Harrison's approved a 3-day recess for transition. It was already in motion. The decision had been made while she was still standing in court, face stinging from Maria's hand. Kinsey slid an envelope across the desk. This arrived an hour ago. The FBI and the Washington Post were copied. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside, a USB drive and a letter from Thomas Wright. The empire she'd built case by case, lie by lie, was beginning to crumble. The forensic accountant who had worked on the Giles case 6 months earlier, before abruptly resigning, was back. "Wright claims he was pressured to alter financial records," Kinsey said, his tone flat. "He says your office threatened his professional license if he didn't comply." "That's absurd," Bondi replied. But even to her own ears the denial sounded weak. "Is it?" Kinsey leaned forward. "Because he's provided emails, Pam, from your private account, not your government one." The air seemed to drain from the room. Those emails existed. She had thought she'd covered her tracks with coded language and careful timing, but she had underestimated Thomas Wright. "Robert, you know how these high-profile cases work," she began carefully. "Sometimes we have to—" Kinsey raised a hand. "Don't say another word without your lawyer. The FBI is opening an investigation. As of now, you're suspended pending the outcome. You can't do that. The Giles case will be reassigned. Your security clearance is revoked effective immediately. I'll need your credentials before you leave." The room seemed to tilt. 23 years of public service, a career built on courtroom triumphs and headlines, all of it now teetering on the edge of ruin. "Why now?" she whispered. "Wright left months ago. Why come forward today?" Kinsey's expression softened, a mix of pity and disgust. "According to his statement, he was afraid. Said something he saw last week gave him the courage to finally speak out." Her phone began to buzz nonstop. News alerts, messages, reporters circling like vultures. Outside, the October sun was blinding. Television crews were already stationed on the steps of the Justice Department. Someone had tipped them off. In Washington, information was currency, and hers was collapsing fast. Her driver waited by the curb, face unreadable. "Home, Miss Bondi?" "No," she said sharply, her mind racing through options, allies, escape routes. "Take me to Morrison and Blake." As the car pulled away, she checked her phone. The headlines were multiplying. Prosecutor Pam Bondi suspended amid evidence tampering allegations. FBI investigating Bondi and Senator Giles' embezzlement case. Justice Department in turmoil. She had built her image as the fearless crusader, the woman who took down the corrupt. The public had admired her. The media had adored her. And all along she'd been bending the rules. First small compromises, then larger ones. Always in the name of justice. Now, as the car wove through traffic, a chilling realization took hold. The same system she had weaponized was turning against her. The same media that had celebrated her victories would now chronicle her downfall. Her phone rang again, her sister, Karen, calling from Florida. "The only person who knew everything. I saw the news," Karen said softly. "How bad is it?" Pam Bondi, who had faced cartel bosses and crooked politicians without fear, felt tears burn behind her eyes for the first time in years. "It's bad," she whispered. "Everything's falling apart. And it all began with that damn slap. 4 minutes. That's all it had taken for the first domino to fall." Now, as the city blurred past her window, Pam Bondi realized the truth she had spent a lifetime avoiding. Justice was finally coming for